Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here today because we're going to unpack something that happens to literally every single one of us every single day. We are uncovering the hidden operating engine of human interaction. Look, if you've ever felt like you're just acting out a script in your relationships, at work, or even with total strangers, you're not crazy. There's a whole invisible layer of communication happening right under our noses, and today we're going to decode the whole thing.
So let me ask you a question. Why on earth do we repeat arguments we know for a fact we cannot win? Think about it for a second. Maybe it's a completely trivial argument about, say, the right way to load the dishwasher. You're smart, the person you're arguing with is smart, and yet there you are, having the exact same unresolved conflict for the 10th time this month. You know exactly what they're going to say, you know exactly how frustrated you're going to feel, and yet you just walk right into the trap anyway. Why do we do this? Are we just gluttons for punishment? Well, as it turns out, the answer is a lot more fascinating and a bit more calculated than we realize.
Okay, let's dive right into this with Section 1, The Hidden World of Games. To figure out why we get stuck in these frustrating loops, we've got to look at the groundbreaking work of psychiatrist Eric Berne. He came up with this idea of a dual-layer communication system. Basically, what we say out loud, that's only half the story. Burns called that hidden layer games. And look, just to be crystal clear right out of the gate here, we are definitely not talking about Monopoly or chess. In this context, games are these repetitive, structured social interactions, and they are driven by hidden psychological motives. They have highly predictable roles, and most importantly, they always end in an emotional payoff that entirely replaces whatever the stated goal of the conversation was. Think of that classic yes but dynamic. You know the one, right? Someone asks you for advice, only to immediately shoot down every single solution you offer. The reality is, they don't actually want help. They want the emotional payoff of proving that their problem is completely unsolvable. People don't just communicate to exchange information. We run these deeply wired, unconscious psychological scripts to extract emotional rewards, all while avoiding direct vulnerability. Think of it kind of like a split screen in our interactions. Over on the left, you've got the surface content. These are the completely rational words you speak aloud. It's the "did you take out the trash?" or "hey, I think we should approach this project differently." But on the right side, that's the hidden transaction. This is the emotional payoff you are secretly, totally unconsciously pursuing. While your actual words are asking about the trash, your hidden transaction might be chasing a feeling of superiority, or looking for validation, or maybe even actively trying to play the victim. The stated goal is just a mirage, guys. The hidden payoff is the real objective. Which brings us to Section 2, Anatomy of a Game. So how exactly does this dual-layer system operate? Let's put on our investigator hats, peel back the layers, and map out the anatomy of these hidden games so we can see what's really happening under the hood. The whole thing actually relies on this unconscious exchange between three distinct ego states inside of us: the parent, the adult, and the child. When we're deep in a game, we unconsciously slip into one of these states and we try to trigger a complementary state in the person we're talking to. For example, if you're coming at someone from a scolding parent state, picture the figurative wagging finger and a patronizing tone. You're secretly hoping they respond from a defensive, whining child state. That exchange right there, that friction, that's what generates the emotional payoff. It is a completely hidden transaction happening right beneath our totally polite, adult-sounding words. And this brilliantly illustrates the cyclical trap we fall into. It's basically a four-step loop. First, the game is played. Second, you get that emotional payoff. Maybe you got to feel righteously indignant or perfectly helpless. Third, because you got that payoff, your internal identity is reinforced. And fourth, because it felt so familiar and it scratched that deep psychological itch, the repetition increases. Getting that emotional payoff, even if it leaves you outwardly furious or exhausted, actually locks you into repeating the exact same frustrating behavior. It's literally an addiction loop.
All right, moving into Section 3, the role trap. Because we're constantly chasing these very specific emotional payoffs, we unknowingly cast ourselves and everybody else around us into these highly predictable, repetitive characters. In this hidden economy of games, we basically get trapped in three recurring identities: the victim, the rescuer, and the persecutor. I want you to stop and be completely honest with yourself for a second. Think about a recurring argument at work, or maybe at home. Have you recently swooped in to save the day, acting as the cape-wearing rescuer for someone who frankly didn't even ask for your help? Or maybe you found yourself playing the persecutor, just pointing out everybody's flaws. Or the victim, feeling like the whole world is just happening to you.
These roles have this incredible magnetic pull, and they have it because they absolutely guarantee that emotional payoff we just talked about. So here is the absolute most crucial point of all of this. The person who defines the game structure controls the emotional outcome. Seriously, let that sink in. If someone successfully frames the narrative, triggers your ego state, and locks you into playing the rescuer to their victim, they are in control of the entire interaction. And here's the totally mind-blowing part. They control it even if they appear to lose the argument on the surface. They got their hidden payoff, which means they actually won the psychological game. Let's widen the lens a bit in Section 4, Games in the Wild. Because look, if you think this psychology is only relevant for marriage counseling or tense family Thanksgiving dinners, think again. These hidden games dictate massive systemic failures across incredibly complex, supposedly rational domains. Check out how this plays out in the wild. Let's start with high-stakes financial trading. Revenge trading is a classic emotional game loop. Its revalidation seeking leads to repeated, brutal losses. The trader just wants the emotional payoff of getting back at the market, completely throwing their rational trading strategy out the window. Or in cybersecurity, social engineering relies entirely on forced role assignment. The hacker intentionally plays the helpless victim to force an employee into that cape-wearing rescuer role, and bam, they've manipulated them into handing over a secure password. In politics, blame games dominate the landscape. They're entirely about narrative control, gaining power through framing, and actively ignoring actual problem-solving just to score points as the righteous persecutor. Even in chess, grandmasters sometimes make hope moves. They prioritize the emotional satisfaction of setting a clever, tricky trap over playing an objectively safe, correct move. Across all these domains, emotional payoffs systematically override rational outcomes. It's wild. But before we get too carried away, let's look at Section 5, the nuance. Now, this is obviously a super powerful psychological model, but I've got to say, it's also one of the most easily overapplied. So before you run out and start diagnosing every single conversation in your life as some highly manipulative game, let's inject a little intellectual rigor here. Modern behavioral science steps in here with a pretty critical correction. Not every repetitive interaction is manipulative. A maladaptive game blocks direct expression and honesty. It replaces real, actual solutions with emotional positioning. But an ordinary social mechanism like that predictable, repetitive morning banter with your barista or light small talk with your coworkers, that actually enables coordination and gives us emotional stability. So the ultimate litmus test to figure out what you're dealing with is super simple. Is honesty being blocked? If yes, you're looking at a game. If it's just helping people coordinate and feel comfortable, well, then it's just a totally normal social structure. All right, let's shift gears. Section 6, breaking the cycle. Say you've recognized that you're trapped in one of these maladaptive games. Someone is clearly pulling you into a role, or hey, maybe you realize you're doing it to someone else. How do you actually get out? Well, I'm going to give you the exact protocol you need to unplug from the system and neutralize these games completely. Here is your core system failure condition. A game simply cannot survive by itself. It absolutely requires participation. Therefore, games instantly collapse when just one participant refuses to play their assigned psychological role. That's right, you have the power to dismantle the entire interaction simply by refusing emotional participation. So here's how you actually do it. I call it the escape sequence. Step 1. Detect the pattern early. Stop listening strictly to the content of the argument and start looking for the role they are trying to assign you. Are they pulling you into the persecutor role? Step 2. Refuse it. Do not take the bait. Do not get defensive, and whatever you do, do not try to rescue them. Step 3. Force explicit adult-to-adult clarification. You cut right through the hidden transaction by asking a super direct, honest question like, what do you actually want to happen here? Or, how can we solve this specific problem? By focusing intensely on direct problem definition instead of the emotional exchange, you force the interaction right back to reality and break that payoff loop completely. I want to leave you with this really powerful psychological truth from our source material. People prefer repeated emotional certainty over unpredictable, honest interaction. This is exactly why these games exist in the first place, and it's exactly why they are so incredibly hard to break. Honest interaction requires vulnerability. It's messy, it's unpredictable. But when you step out of the game, when you finally drop those heavy roles of victim, rescuer, or persecutor, you open the door to actual, genuine human connection. And honestly, that is the game actually worth playing. So the next time you feel that familiar, super predictable frustration bubbling up in an argument, just ask yourself, What role are they trying to hand me right now? And am I brave enough to drop the script? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I really hope it completely changes how you view your very next conversation. Keep observing, keep learning, and I'll catch you in the next one.